It's 6 p.m., May the 20th, 2013, so it's time to start this regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the San Felipe Del Rio CISD. Mr. Overfell, we have a quorum, correct?
Yes, sir, we do.
And it's time to call it to order. Let the record show that a quorum of the board members is present, that this meeting's been duly called, and that notice of this meeting's been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. This time, if you'd stand for opening ceremonies. First, a moment of silence to reflect your own way. Now the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. That brings us to agenda item 4. Introduction and welcome of the new superintendent, Dr. Carlos Rios. Since this is Dr. Rios' first Board of Trustees meeting, and there's a lot of people in attendance, I'd like to just take a couple minutes to introduce him and welcome him. As many of you know, and some don't, so I'll go into some detail. His credentials include a bachelor's, master's, and a doctorate from Texas A&M University. He's a former U.S. Navy officer, and he actually started his education career at Del Rio High School 20 years ago. Taught for about 2.5 years at Del Rio High School. Then his determination took him to Bryan, Texas as a teacher, coach, I believe it was basketball coach, correct? Basketball coach, and then assistant principal. From there he went to Seguin ISD, back to San Felipe Del Rio CISD, on to Austin ISD, and then back to San Felipe Del Rio CISD once again. During that time, he served as either an assistant principal or a principal. His last assignment in this district was principal of Del Rio Middle School. Over the last 4 years, he distinguished himself as an executive director of compliance and accountability at Laredo ISD, and most recently as assistant superintendent at Seguin ISD. Now, kind of looking back over the history of searches and boards' interests in superintendents, I think it's well known. Some have felt that, well, we need someone from the outside. Others have said we need someone local. Dr. Rios is kind of a unique combination of both of those qualities. He represents both attributes. I think if you look at his record, he started his career here in Del Rio, but he achieved the vast majority of his experience in other large districts, like the ones I mentioned, Austin, Seguin, Bryan. I think it's also reassuring to know that Dr. Rios' 4 children will be in our school district, ranging from elementary to high school, correct? And so they'll experience the same public education system as thousands of other families in our community. So it's in those ways that I've mentioned, and in other ways too numerous to recount. I think Dr. Rios uniquely fits the district and therefore enhances it. And he knows the district faces challenges. He knows what those challenges are. He also knows that those challenges can't hold us back. Only we can do that if we fail to act. But I think it's clear from looking at his record of accomplishment in education and other fields that he's definitely a man of action, a man with known skill and accomplishments in instructional leadership, which is certainly one of those areas that we are focused on. So with that, simply welcome back, Dr. Rios. Anything to say?
I am incredibly honored and just humbled to be back in my hometown where so many educators loved me and raised me. Some who are present in this room today. And I hope in that spirit to provide the leadership that will make this district better every day. To the board, I pledge a tremendous amount of transparency in everything that I do, and all my passion and energy to make this a better place for our children. So thanks for that kind welcome, and let's get to work.
And for those of you who don't know, Dr. Rios' first day was May 6th, so he's been on the job for about 2 weeks. Hit the ground running. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 5, public comments. Ms. Falcone, did anyone? Okay, no public comments at this time. Agenda item 6, information items. First being A, Del Rio High School, Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America students advanced to nationals. Mr. Roger Gonzalez, CTE Director, presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board. Here I come again with the CTE success stories. This is a continuation of the CTE programs and certifications that we have in the district. The Del Rio High School chapter of Family and Career and Community Leaders of America, FCCLA, competed at the Texas FCCLA State Leadership Conference in Dallas, Texas on April 11th through the 13th. Proudly representing the state of Texas in the following events are Carla Chavez, Crystal Gallegos, and Yanet Garcia. These students qualified for Chapter Showcase Manual by placing second at state. Chapter Showcase Manual is a team event that recognizes chapters that develop and implement a well-balanced program of work and promote FCCLA and family and consumer science or related occupations and skills to the community. Participants must prepare a manual and an oral presentation. Representing the state of Texas in job interview is Maria Jose Cantu. Job interview is an individual event that recognizes participants who use family and consumer science and or related occupation skills to develop a portfolio, participate in an interview, and communicate a personal understanding of job requirements. Participants must prepare a portfolio including a job application and express their communication skills and job knowledge through an interview. I would also like to introduce Ms. Linda Corbell, who is the CT Education and Training Teacher and FCCLA sponsor. This ladies, along with their FCCLA sponsor, Mrs. Corbell, will attend the National Leadership Conference to be held July 7th through the 11th of 2013 in Nashville, Tennessee. Involvement in FCCLA offers members the opportunity to expand their leadership potential and develop skills for life. Planning goal settings, problem solving, decision-making, and interpersonal communication necessary in the home and the workplace. We would also like to thank school administration, school board for making this trip a reality. We would also like to recognize the support of the parents. So again, I introduce you representing the state of Texas at the FCCLA event in Nashville, this fine group of ladies. Thank you very much.
Good job, girls.
Outstanding. That brings us to agenda item B. Del Rio High School Health Science students earn certified nursing assistant certificates. Again, Mr. Gonzalez, CTE Director, presenting.
Again, good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board. Again, continuing on with another of the programs, successful programs through the CT program at the high school. The Nursing Assistance Program, Nurse Assistant Training and Competency Evaluation Program, the NACEP, approved by the Texas Department of Aging and Disability, or DATS. The students are required to complete 75 clock hours of instruction, including 51 classroom instruction and 24 clinical training hours. The nurse aide must pass a training program to be eligible to take the state exam. The National Nurse Assessment Program examination is an evaluation of nurse assistants' related knowledge, skills, and abilities, and was developed by the National Council of State Boards of Nursing. There are two parts to this exam: a written exam consisting of 70 multiple choice items, and also the Texas skill examination consisting of 5 randomly selected skills. The skills tested are selected from a checklist of over 34 testing criteria in the Texas curriculum for nurse assistants in long-term care facilities. Students are required to become competent of 54 skills, which include nursing, rehabilitation, and mental health skills. The nurse aide must pass the skills test and then the written test before being placed on the nurse assistant registry. These exams are administered by a nurse examiner assigned by DADS. Since 2007, I'm proud to say that the CTE department has certified approximately 122 students as nursing assistants. CNA passing rate since 2007 has been 100%. Former CNA students are employed in different health care facilities in our community, as well as around the state, in long-term facilities, dialysis clinics, physician's office, assisted living facilities, and blood plasma centers. At this time, I would like to introduce Cristina Martinez and Tania Chapa, CNA students, who would like to share their experiences in the program. Also, I would like to introduce our instructor, registered nurse, Laura Guerrero.
Good evening, Dr. Rios, San Felipe del Rio CISD board members, administrative staff, teachers, parents, and community members. We would like to thank all of you for helping us reach the first milestone into our medical career. First, we would like to thank the school board for the support and approval given to our certification programs, especially the Certified Nurse Assistant program at Del Rio High School. Also, thanks to the Career and Technical Education Department Director, Mr. Gonzalez, for making all the necessary arrangements to make this possible and for extending the invitation to be recognized during this event. We would like to thank the Valverde Nursing Facility for their partnership and trust placed in us by allowing us to work with their cherished residents. And a special thanks to our parents for providing financial and emotional support, but most of all, their love and guidance.
During this program, we've experienced long hours of hard work. Among 54 nursing, rehabilitation, and mental health skills, this program taught us the meaning of responsibility, commitment, compassion, patience, and endurance. Waking up at 4 in the morning to report to clinical rotations, surviving through the school day, and staying up late at night to finish homework meant sacrifice, but it was all worth it. While working with residents, we were able to personally experience how gain knowledge and care made a difference in other people's lives. Caring for patients gave us a newly discovered sense of personal fulfillment and meaning which cannot be learned inside a classroom. Ultimately, we would like to thank our instructor, Ms. Guerrero, for her guidance and dedication invested into this program. We've now successfully become certified nurse assistants. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would also like to say that this student, Tania Chapa, scored a perfect score in her exam. I'm going to show you a couple of the pictures from our CNA program. Actually, students that actually get to experience some of the practices at the high school and also through the nursing program at Valverde. These are some of the things that they actually got to practice on. This is one of our labs at the high school. Again, this is all part of our labs that are actually right next to their actual classroom at Del Rio High School. At this time, the Department of Aging and Disability Service requires that the students receive the program completion diplomas. We'll present the diplomas at this time. Assisting with the presentation is Nurse Guerrero and Guadalupe Valdez, also a former CNA student of Ms. Guerrero and now program assistant. The first student that we're going to call out is Cristina Martinez. Sandra Gutierrez. Samantha Derrick. Bianca Renteria. Miguel López. Deborah Salas. Tania Chapa. Gudelio Garza. Gabriela Valdez. Nicole Lynchquist. Jasmine George. Jacqueline Monsivais. Nadia González. Priscilla Montejano. Tamara Beltrán. Jessica de la Rosa. Ladies and gentlemen, I present the 2012-2013 Certified Nursing Assistant graduate from Del Rio High School. We would also like to recognize Sarah Reyes, the Assistant Director of Nursing for Valverde Nursing and Rehab, and also Cristina Guerra, the administrator that actually has helped with the program. This is a great partnership with Valverde Nursing and Rehabilitation. That's part of our the need through our CNA program to actually partner up with local agencies. And again, Valverde Nursing and Rehab opened the doors for our CNA program. Again, congratulations and thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Good to see you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations. You'll always find a job in the health field. Congratulations.
A pleasure. Pleasure being on. Great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Gonzalez. Brings us to agenda item 6C, recognition of Del Rio High School exemplary migrant students. Presenter, Dr. Well, it says Dr. Garza, Michelle Smith, and Dr. Sally Zuniga Barrera, so Ms. Smith will be presenting.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios,
Ms.
school board
Smith,
members.
wait till it clears out a little bit.
It's a fact to follow. Next time I want to be first. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, school board members. In continuing with our student recognition, I would like to present to you tonight a migrant success story. High school migrant students from across the state were recognized during the 26th Annual Migrant Student Recognition Ceremony, April 15th, held at the Texas Union Ballroom on the main campus of the University of Texas at Austin. You will find at your seat a packet containing a program from the ceremony held at UT. Texas has the second largest migrant education program and the largest interstate migrant student population in the nation. Students and their families migrate annually from Texas to 47 other states to work in agricultural and other seasonal jobs. The mission of the University of Texas at Austin's Migrant Student Graduation Enhancement Program is to help Texas migrant students graduate from high school on time by providing flexible courses and support services that enable migrant students to earn high school credit at any time and any place while on the migrant trail. Since the program's inception in 1987, it has enrolled over 26,000 migrant students. The 2013 ceremony honored 40 exemplary migrant students representing 20 Texas school districts. The students were selected based on the following criteria: the obstacles they had overcome related to their migrancy, their academic achievement, participation in extracurricular and community activities, and their performance in the UT Migrant Student Program courses. Of the 40 students that were honored at the 2013 Migrant Student Recognition Ceremony, 2 were from San Felipe del Rio CISD. At this time, we are proud to present the 2013 exemplary migrant students. Assisting with the presentation is our migrant coordinator, Olaya Gonzalez. The first student we would like to recognize is Jaime Garcia, accompanied with his mother, Marisela Garcia. We'll make you sweat for a while. Jaime Garcia, son of Antonio and Marisela Garcia, migrates every year with his parents and 3 brothers to Ozuna, Texas, where the family gathers livestock and builds fences. I have good experiences as a migrant student, says Jaime, who was born in Del Rio, Texas. I have met a good staff in the migrant program. They support you and help you out with whatever you need, he says. At Del Rio High School, Jaime takes advantage of migrant resources to accomplish his goal of graduating from high school and going to college. He is willing to work at whatever he needs in order to ensure that he does graduate in June, says Jaime's migrant educator. In order to earn all of the required credits, Jaime has enrolled in a distance learning course from the Migrant Student Program. Jaime enjoys participating in many extracurricular activities at school. He has played football, run track, and been a member of the school band. In his spare time, Jaime pursues his hobby of being a DJ. He informed me that he loves to do sounds and lights, and you can see his enthusiasm when he talks about working with a DJ, says Jaime's migrant educator. The only thing stronger than Jaime's interest in being a DJ is his desire to pursue a college degree. He has a strong desire to go into law enforcement and is anxious to start college, says his migrant educator. Jaime Garcia. Our second 2013 exemplary migrant student is Christian Novato, accompanied by his mother, Maylene Novato. Christian Novato is the eldest child of Maylene Novato. Born and raised in Del Rio, Texas, Christian migrates to Pasco, Washington with his mother and his sister to pick cherries. As a migrant worker, I would have to get up early. We would have good days and bad days. A bad day to me was when it would rain, said Christian. Christian pushes himself to achieve at Del Rio High School, especially this year because it is his senior year. Christian is an active participant in class, and he strives to challenge himself academically, says his English teacher. He continues to impress me with his knowledge, skills, and dedication to his work, she says. Christian has enrolled in distance learning courses from the Migrant Student Program to remain on track to graduate from high school and become a role model to his younger sister. For the first 3 years of high school, Christian played basketball on the school's basketball team. During his spare time, Christian has volunteered at local food drives. He has been an active member of his church youth group called Fully Relying on God, FROG. I have seen and been through many struggles that my mother has encountered as a single parent, and I would like to advance in life, says Christian. He aspires to attend St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas, and pursue a degree in kinesiology under the College Assistance Migrant Program, otherwise known as CAMP. Christian Novato. Through dedication, hard work, support from their parents, teachers, and mentors, these two students standing before us have a bright future ahead of them. We wish them the best in their post-high school endeavors. Thank you. Congratulations, Mom.
Congratulations.
Good job, honey. Keep up the good work, okay?
Thank you, Mom.
Congratulations, Mr.
Thank you.
That brings us to agenda item 6D, recognition letter for Ruben Chavita Elementary, Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary, and North Heights Elementary Student Councils. Presenter, Dr. Jorge Garza.
Thank you, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, and member of the board. I am going to call Mrs. Brown to come up here and present. She is involved with the Student Council. She does set up a workshop at the beginning of the year. So at this time, I would like to ask Mrs. Brown to come up here and present.
Thank you, Dr. Garza. Each year, the National Association of Elementary School Principals recognizes outstanding elementary and middle school student councils throughout the nation. This year, the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association is proud to announce that Texas is celebrating 70 of the National Student Council Excellent Award recipients. Of those 70 outstanding student councils, 3 of those campuses are in San Felipe Del Rio, CISD. The campuses are Ruben Chavira, Lonnie Green, and North Heights. This is a prestigious honor and is indicative of the outstanding work done on these campuses to foster student leadership opportunities. They will be presented with a trophy at our Leaders Are Us workshop in the fall. Now, would those 3 principals please come forward and introduce your student council? Ruben Chavira.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. And we proudly present to you the executive members of our student council and some of our members. We're very proud of all of our members, and so Reno has already started. If you guys will go over and shake our board members' hands, Mijo, right there. Thanks for taking the lead, Reno.
True politician there.
There you go.
All right. Good job.
And lastly, these kiddos are being led by our student council sponsor, Mrs. Benavides. Okay, and also back here, being very shy, is Mrs. Galindo, who also helps us always with our student council.
Never known there's a shy person.
Hey, so welcome aboard. Shy.
That doesn't describe you at all.
Thank you.
And of course, we cannot do this without our parents, and one of them is here, Mrs. Martinez. Thank you very much. Okay, this is our 3rd time awards. These guys are doing great.
Lonnie Green.
Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Rios. I present to you our Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary Student Council members that were able to be present this evening, along with their sponsors, Mrs. Monica Rivera, as well as Mrs. Amanda Franco. They have worked very hard this year. They have come to the forefront representing their school very well. Any help that we've needed around the campus, including school beautification, anything with the other organizations that have needed help, they have come forward and helped us, especially during Teacher Appreciation Week. They really outdid themselves, providing a lot of support and encouragement for our teachers who've worked really hard all year long. So big congratulations to our student council. It is their first year of being the recipient, so we are very proud and happy to have them. So congratulations, boys and girls. And their sponsors, Mrs. Monica Rivera and Mrs. Amanda Franco.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Way to
Thank
go.
you.
Way to go. Good job.
Want to see you again next year. Thank you. Congratulations. Yes.
Way to go. Good job.
Good work.
Congratulations.
Good job. There you go. Ouch. Good job.
Good work.
Way to go. Keep up the good work. I'll go to respectful.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And last but not least, North Heights. Good evening, wonderful board members. We do have our student council here tonight. We're very proud of them. And if they would come up, North Heights Student Council. They're back there. They're coming. They've been trying to be quiet back there, so. One of the things while they're coming up is their highlights. One of the things that I think made them achieve this award was all of their community service projects that they did with Loaves and Fishes, the Sheriff's Department for the toy drives, and the jacket drives. And our students were very proud of them because they've learned this whole year. They've been focusing on student disabilities, and they've been learning about visual impairments and autism and deaf education. And so they are much more aware of other students in our community who have different needs than theirs. And so we're very proud of them also to know more about other students and how important it is to give back to our community. So this is our wonderful North Heights Student Council. We're very proud of them. And it is sponsored by Mrs. Musquiz Ortiz. And we have our other members. We have Mrs. Bradford, Mr. Cardenas, we have Mr. Cantu, and of course our intern assistant principal, Ms. Billings, is back here also. So we're very proud of you boys and girls, and thank you for representing North Heights so well.
Good job. Good job.
Just work your way around, boys.
Good job. Good job. Good job.
Want to see you next year, okay? Thanks for your Thank you. See you next year. You can go the second time, Hercules. Go right ahead. Yes, thank you. Excellent job.
That brings us to agenda item 6E, recognition letter for the Del Rio High School UIL One Act Play contestants and teacher Raquel Martinez, presenter Dr. Jorge Garza and Dr. Sally Zuniga Barrera.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, school board members. This evening, I'm very proud to share a wonderful letter that we received from one of the contest judges when our students went to UIL One Act Play just a couple months ago. And these are some of the students that participated. And I just want to read the letter that was sent to us. It says, Dear Dr. Zuniga Barrera, wow. Do you ever have some talented, well-behaved students and some remarkably dedicated teachers? As the critic judge at this year's District 29 5A One Act Play Contest, I just wanted to let you know how impressed I was by Raquel Yanis Martin and her students. Their production of the Great Pandemonium was delightful. Equally, if not more important, there was the overall behavior of the Darrell High School students. At a time when there are so many complaints and concerns about kids today, I am pleased to report to you that the students in your theater program were excellent ambassadors for your school and your community. As a classroom teacher, theater director, and theater educator respondent for the last 40 years, I know what makes for good productions and good students, good directors. And you certainly have that. The performance and the exemplary behavior of your students was the direct result of Raquel Martin Yanez's knowledgeable, industrious, and dedicated leadership. In short, you were represented by winners at this year's UIL One Act Play Contest. Cordially, Roger Schultz, PhD, Professor Emeritus of Theater. And so I just wanted to take this time to acknowledge our theater teacher, give her a time or an opportunity to introduce our students as well and acknowledge them. And I thought that was really nice for them to acknowledge our students. I'm very proud of the different productions that they have put on. I know Dr. Rios was able to go see one production. We still have something pending for the fall. So at this time, I'd like to recognize our theater teacher. Raquel? Don't be shy. I know you're not shy.
They're just so extremely tired right now.
How are you, sir? Good to see you.
Thank you. I'm just going to take a quick moment to recognize my One Act students for this year. Very dedicated, very proud. I'm very sad because I am losing 7 of these wonderful students this year. We're going to start over here with Rudy Castellanos, who is presently our thespian president. We have Aurea Calderon, we have Amber Carta, we have Claudia Esquivel, her sister Paola Esquivel, we have Beatriz Garza, we have Kaylee Council, we have Karen Urbano, we have Jennifer Pacheco, Luz Zilka, Kaylee Ramelli, Michael Jimenez, Zach Vasquez, Stephanie Davis, George Lerma, Jay Slack, and Joseph Fabian. I wanted to call him JoJo. Very proud of these students. And if I can just take a moment, I'd like to read this to you. As a director and educator, these are the moments that you truly see the fruits of your labor. I'm extremely grateful to Dr. Sally Zuniga Barrera and our APs for their support of our program. Thank you, and I invite everyone here to attend our last student production, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 7:01, being directed by Rudy Castellanos and Zach Vasquez. And our Grease, which opens Thursday of next week. We have Thursday, Friday, a matinee Saturday at 2 o'clock, and a matinee on Sunday. On behalf of my students and myself, I want to thank you for the opportunity of having us here, administrators, board members, superintendent, Dr. Rios, for your support of our theater program at Del Rio High School. My students were extremely happy that although you have just started your position as superintendent, you took the time to come to see one of my 3 student-directed shows. The letter from Dr. Schultz regarding our One Act Play speaks volumes about our students' work ethic and commitment to not only our program, but to our school and community. Thank you.
Yes, that was me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Outstanding teacher always.
Brings us to agenda item 6F, recognition of fine arts dance and University Interscholastic League accomplishments. Del Rio Middle School Queens Pom Team and Del Rio Freshman School Sapphires that competed at the Showtime International Dance Competition. Del Rio Middle School Mariachi Nuevo Juventud that competed at the Culturas Unidas Mariachi Festival. And Del Rio Middle School and Del Rio High School bands for receiving a first division rating for a sweepstakes award at the University Interscholastic League competition. Presenter, Mr. Juan Nanez.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Board President, members of the Board, Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Rios. Today I will be presenting some of the accomplishments of the fine arts students. It's always a pleasure to come before you with positive news about our students. I would like to begin with acknowledging our fine arts students and also their instructors, Ms. Lopez, Ms. Brandenberger, Mr. Wagner, Mr. Brijava, Mr. White, Mr. Aldaco, Mr. Rios. So I'll present each group with their sponsor and director. The first group is our one of our Del Rio Middle School Queens Pom Team. This group has been in existence for, I would say, 3 years, and they competed at the Showtime International Dance Competition at Six Flags over Texas back in April. And the girls brought back 6 awards: first place in both officers' routine, runners-up in the team routine, along with 2 other awards receiving scores over 90 out of 100 possible points. Let me turn this mic over to Ms. Lopez. But before I do that, there's a student that would like to make a presentation.
Good evening, Dr. Rios and school board. My name is Miranda Covarrubias, and I'm one of the officers at the Del Rio Middle School Queens Pom Team. And then along with us, we have Araya Davila and Annalise Velasco, also one of our officers. And we're also missing Eileen Borrego and Leslie Martinez. They weren't able to come here. And I would just like to say that our year has been such a great success and such a great success, along with our wonderful teacher, Ms. Kayla Lopez. This year we have really worked hard and put a lot of commitment, dedication, and we've learned so much, but most of all, we learned how to be a team. And we would like to thank our principal, Ms. Gomez, and our head director for the fine arts, Mr. Nanez, for everything they have done for us. And we'd like to show our appreciation for all, and we have from you, we have a little something for you. Yes, thank you.
Yes, it was their idea. Can we make something? Sure, girls. That's very thoughtful. I would just like to say thank you, school board members, also for your support. And the middle school, I will say that the program is still new. This is the 3rd year, so we only expect the program to get better. And the girls, like I said, have worked hard, and our numbers are growing. And all I can say is that these girls will be successful next year. We have half of them who tried out for Queen City Bells, who will be Bells next year, and we have a lot of them who want to further their dance with dance company at the high school. So thank you, and they would also like a picture with y'all as well with the trophies. So you want to take a picture? Yes. There you go. Can we have a picture with y'all? Yes. There you go. Go ahead. Mr. Nanez, can I have your
I think you should be in there.
Oh, I should be in that. Dr. Carson, can you take the picture?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Ms. Lopez. Our next group is the Del Rio Freshman Sapphires. Our Sapphires is under the direction of Ms. Brandon Berger. They also went to the competition in San Antonio and won first and best in category for the palm routine, first for the officers jazz, and second for the kick routine, once again at the competition Fiesta, Texas back in April. At this time, I'd like to present Ms. Brandon Berger.
Thank you, Dr. Rios and members of the school board. I'm Ms. Brandenberger, the director of the Sapphires. Here next to me are three of my officers, Alexi Rodriguez, Julie Martinez, and Shayla Samaniago, holding two of our first division trophies and one best in category award. And behind them is the other officers, Jasenia Balderas, Bianca De Hoyas, Ruby Porres, and Jessica Delgado. The team received these awards at Showtime International Dance Competition at Fiesta, Texas in San Antonio for the Palm and Officer Jazz routines. I want to thank Mr. Nanez for allowing me the opportunity to work with these girls. I had a great year and it was awesome. Looking forward to next year. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Beebe.
Once again, congratulations to a great program, the Sapphires, which is in existence for the second year in a row. All right, our next organization is our Del Rio Middle School Mariachi. Okay, they under the direction of Mr. Wagner. The Mariachi competed in Laredo. They received a first division superior rating and won first place in the middle school non-varsity classification. Not only did they win the first division, but their group also was awarded top trumpets, armonias, and vocalists. Vocalists included Marisa Madera and Janela Rubio. I'll turn the mic over to Mr. Wagner at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Nunez. Board. This is the first year that we've had a non-varsity mariachi at Del Rio Middle School. The 8th grade is the first year they start mariachi. We had over 30 students in the non-varsity group and over 25 in the varsity group, so we've split it up that way. And we went and got first place, and this in the group's first year of existence. So we appreciate Mr. Nanez for finding the funds to send us there, and the district for helping us with that, and look forward to a future with this group.
Thank you again, congratulations. All right, the next group is also the Del Rio Middle School Concert Band under the direction of Mr. Wagner, once again. We asked them to bring just several of the students, otherwise we'll have like about 600 in here today. So the Del Rio Middle School Concert Band received a second division excellent rating in their concert performance, which was an Eagle Pass, and first division superior rating in their sight reading performance. Once again, we'd like to commend them because this is the standard we have set for our program, UIL trophies, and those are the ones we compete for. We don't do invitationals. Okay, so once again, congratulations, Mr. Wagner. And the other gentleman, also from the Del Rio Middle School, is Mr. Brijava, which leads the Del Rio Middle School Symphonic Band. symphonic band competed also in Eagle Pass UIL Concert and Sight Reading Contest in April in Eagle Pass facilities. The band received a sweepstakes award from all the judges, which comprises of 6 total judges, 3 in the concert stage and 3 in the sight reading. But this is not the first at Del Rio Middle School. Mr. Brijalva has kept a tradition for close to 2 decades of excellence at the middle school. So I commend the students and their director for the outstanding job that they do in representing our school district as well as our community. Congratulations once again. We're now at the Del Rio High School Symphonic Band. Actually, I'll start with the concert band, sorry. Del Rio Concert Band. Yes, Del Rio Concert Band, under direction of Mr. Aldaco. In band competition, we traveled to San Antonio with the Northside schools, and they competed at UIL Concert Sight Reading Contest at Taft High School. And last year was the first time in the school's history that the concert band had received a sweepstakes rating. This year, the concert band once again received a sweepstakes award from all 6 judges, and that's not easy to do, especially with a concert band. I mean, so I commend the instructions of the director, Mr. Aldaco, and also the outstanding work that the students do in the classroom on a day-to-day basis. So at this time, I'd like to turn the mic over to Mr. Aldaco.
I would like to, first of all, thank the support of the administration for your continued support to our band program, and also thank the support of our staff at the Del Rio High School. You know, we're never in this alone. You know, we all work as a team, and without that, I don't think we could be as successful, or success would not be reached as easy. But I would like to say this, and I've been saying this all week long. These students this year in my group have made this year very rewarding. And not just rewarding, but they've made it a joyful experience for me as an educator and as a band director, and I want to thank them because they worked very hard. And one of the best things that you can experience as an educator is that raw emotion in that moment when they achieve their success, and it's as if they won the World Series, and it's just, that's what you work for, you know, that very moment, you know. And I was built to that moment, and I like to say I'm very, very proud of my kids for all the hard work they've done, and hopefully we can continue this every year from here on out. Thank you.
Once again, congratulations and thank you. Our next group, also competing at UIL, is our symphonic band under the direction of Mr. White. Our program has grown tremendously that we have 3 competing bands, but we actually have 4 bands, which probably means that next year, we'll be starting to compete with the 4th band. And so Mr. White, under the direction of Mr. White, they received straight 1 superior ratings at the UIL concert concert contest at Taft High School. And the group also received 2 second division and a first division excellent rating at the UIL sight reading portion on the same day. So once again, we continue to have the traditions that have been established for years and years with the band program at the high school, and they continue to excel at the expectations set for the UIL standard. So once again, I commend Mr. White, and I commend the students, all the students that participated, which are probably about 90 students in that organization.
Thank you, members of the board. I just want to say thank you for all the support you've given us, especially the Fine Arts Department. We could not do it without your support. The kids you see in front of you are our leaders, basically my first and second chairs of the groups. These are the kids that not only, like we have to get the kids involved, they are the peer pressure that gets the kids to get along and also learn their music. So these kids are great leaders. Can't say enough about them. I'm very proud of them. Without them, this couldn't be possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. And my last organization to present to you is the Del Rio High School Wind Ensemble. The Wind Ensemble is under the direction of Mr. Rios. The Wind Ensemble received all Division I ratings as well, with all the 6 judges at UIL Concerts I Reading, also held at Taft High School. And once again, the group continues the tradition of sweepstakes awards at the Del Rio High School Band Hall, as they will be placed in the trophy cases. I commend Mr. Rios' work, and he does an outstanding job keeping the standards of the Mighty Ram Band, and also the students. I can only tell you one thing. Our numbers will be increasing. In fact, we'll be over 300 some odd band members this coming year, and that's because of the standards that that's have already been established at that band hall, and also what's coming in from the middle schools feeding into the high school. So I'm very proud of the work that the students and Mr. Rios does, and all his staff, as well as the middle school staff. So this time, I'd like to turn the mic over to Mr. Ricardo Rios.
Thank you, Mr. Yanez. I'm just extremely proud of the work that all of our students have done. We are in the Northside District 5A, and we have to be competing against the students from San Antonio. And one of the things that we always stress to our kids is that for them not to feel intimidated or any inferior in being able to compete against these people. And this year with our wind ensemble, we played a piece of music that at first we thought it wasn't within our reach. And I feel that we really proved that we can compete at any level. We were able to, it's really almost a college level piece that we were able to perform at, and the judges were actually all very, very, very pleased with what they heard, not only from our group, but I'm also extremely pleased with what we heard from the other 2 competing bands. Mr. Aldaco's work, Mr. White's work has been very good as well as down at the middle school. So it's a great package deal. I'm very proud of all of the staff, all the way from middle school, starting with the 6th grade with Mr. Bassler and Mr. Morales for what they've done this year as well. And we actually have 2 trophies, because one is a sweepstakes trophy from making first divisions in marching, against Northside schools, and the second trophy is the one that we got as a wind ensemble. So I can't say how proud I mean express just the gratitude of the kids, how hard they have worked, and the support that we've received from our administration. It's great to be in Del Rio. I'm not originally from Del Rio, but it's great to be in Del Rio, and we appreciate all the support, and we hope that we can continue with a winning tradition that we've established here in Del Rio. Thank you.
Members of the board, superintendent, the students and their instructors have done a tremendous job and have represented our school and the community in a very, very positive way. Congratulations to all the staff and all the students for the hard work and dedication that they do year after year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your commitment.
Mr. Naik, how many students do we have in fine arts total?
We have 7,400 students that we service.
Man, my congratulations to you and your staff. Wonderful. The more kids we have out there participating, the better school district will have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kids off the streets like that.
It's always nice to see the achievements of our district students. Congratulations again to all of them. Makes the district proud. Now we move on. Agenda item 6G, Facilities and Operations Update. First being Ruben Chavita Elementary Construction Update. Mr. Salinas and Mr. Graves presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board. At this time, we're pleased to report that the gym wall pads and the basketball goals were received approximately 4 weeks ago, and they have been installed. In addition, the administrative staff and the secretarial staff have moved into their newly renovated office space. And Mr. Graves has several pictures to share with us.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, and welcome Dr. Rios and board members. I'd like to go ahead and present, start out with the library. I think most of y'all have seen that. This was completed back in December. That's a classroom at the library. This is the PE facility that they now have full use of everything in there. I think we're waiting on a projection screen is about all in there. This is a connecting canopy from the existing school to the gymnasium. That is the gymnasium. And I think Mr. Salinas selected some good colors for the school. Turned out real nice. We have some windows up there to let in some natural light during the daytime. This is the coach's office. This is the new administrative area. This was originally the library. We built a new library and took the old library, and since it was centrally located in the school, and turned that into the new administrative offices. All the furniture is in now, and it was in use when I was over there last Thursday. Conference room. Principal's offices. And this is the parental room.
Just want to add that the 6 goals that are in the gym, they are fully adjustable from, I believe, 8 foot to 10 foot. That's great. Are there any questions?
Questions or comments?
Just a comment. I've been there, and it was about last week, 2 weeks ago, something like that, and it was completed, and I like that it's beautiful. Well, thank you.
Turned out real nice.
We're going to provide a final report in July. The storefront doors down the hallways, that's about a 2-month lead time. And that should wrap up the project.
Mr. Missa.
I also want to thank administration again for providing, gymnasiums to those schools that don't have any, and it makes a big difference. I know Dr. McNamara can attest to that. She was there several years. That, especially in weather like what we're having now, it just does a world of good for all our student body and all those teachers that are supervising those activities outside. So again, thank you, and those color schemes are outstanding. They're great. Thank you.
Any other questions on that item? Okay, that takes us to the second one, the Bank and Trust Ram Field construction update.
Where else do we need gymnasiums?
We're lacking one, and that's at Buena Vista. And we're reviewing our remaining funds as we speak so that we can bring it to the board as a consideration.
What about Cardwell? Anything to be done out there?
That was not part of the bond package, Mr. Chavita, so that would have to be looked at with local. Yes, sir. Well, at this time, moving on to the Bank and Trust Ram Field. This is our final presentation for this field. It is complete. This last Saturday, the Babe Ruth League had their opening season ceremonies, and they have a full calendar of games scheduled all the way through July. Mr. Graves.
The contractor is supposed to be finished with everything on the 24th, which is Friday. So he's working hard at that on it. There are still a few things that need to be done on the outside of the field. There is a gate down at one end that the contractor is going to be replacing. It's an old gate. And when you fix everything else up, things that don't quite look good need to be replaced too. Wasn't in the original plans, but it's a simple item.
Mr. Graves, will you tell them a little bit about the louvers here?
The louvers on those stands are to protect the grandstands from the west sun, people in the grandstands.
On the home side?
On the home side on it. When it gets down fairly low, there are enough trees there to help shade that. So anyway, hopefully it'll make the spectators a little cooler up there. This is the new entrance with the double arches. Behind that is the press box. This is going from the grandstands to the dugouts. The press box is up above, ticket booth down below.
And at this time, the city is waiting to see how the project came in based on what was allotted for it, for these open areas that you see where there's no roof line, to install some type of netting. And that concludes our presentation.
Questions or discussion?
Oh, it's great. Again, I was there today, and they look great. The field, the grass, everything looks great. You know, they were cleaning it up today. I guess they're having a game tonight.
Yes, Monday through Thursday, just about every week, and then every Saturday and some Sundays. So they have a full schedule.
Mrs. Lozano has a question or
I just
comment.
have a question. Are those gates, I haven't been there to see it recently, are those gates anchored somehow when they're open?
They are.
They don't
There's
swing
going to be
back
two
and forth?
pipes there.
I'm sorry?
And they open, there are two pipes that go in front of those gates. And when they swing open, then they're padlocked.
Oh,
They open towards each other.
right.
So they'll be held in the open position whenever there's a game.
I mean, I could just imagine children swinging and playing and having a grand time.
Other question? Oh, I'm sorry.
And the status on the lights, you know how at night when the lights,
We're going to leave them like they are.
and not
Just
use
turn them off at night or when the other lights are on. And just leave those off. There's plenty of light from the field lights in there. But when they clean up at night, they'll turn off the field lights and then turn these on. So we figured that was the simplest solution.
Right.
Anything else for Mr. Graves or Mr. Salinas?
The city will be sending us notice after the 24th when they're going to have the grand opening. They'll be scheduling that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Brings us to agenda item 6H, information on grant award submitted to TASB Risk Management. Lauda English presenting.
Good evening, Dr. Rios, Mr. Garabedian, board members. San Felipe Del Rio CISD applied for the 2013 TASB Risk Management Fund Loss Prevention Grant. This application was an effort to address the concern of injuries in the custodial department. We have approximately 40 custodians who work in areas where they're very wet and slippery. So in order to reduce the amount of accidents due to slips and falls, we applied for this grant to purchase slip-resistant shoes for the custodians And our district will receive a total of $4,000, which is the maximum amount that is allowed under that grant to purchase these shoes. Do you have any questions?
Questions or discussion for Ms. English?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Agenda item 6I, attendance rates today by school. Mr. Reno Luna presenting.
Good evening, Mr. President, honorable board members, Dr. Rios, community members. For the record, my name is Rene Luna. I'm the MIS Director, and tonight I'll be presenting attendance reports and ADA reports. We'll begin tonight with the enrollment count for the school district. This was taken on the date that we had to submit attachments to Ms. Betty. The enrollment for the district on May the 10th, 2013 was 10,275. The cumulative ADA, as reported monthly to the board, has changed slightly. Dr. Rios asked that we have added, or to add a different line for SFDR enrollment. So forgive me if you don't have the current slide, but I do have copies for the board if you don't have the one that has the SFDR line. What we have done is gone back to the year the school year 2011-2012 and the school year 2012-2013. And for every month of the school year, we have added the district average for the month. So if you notice, for April 2013, the average daily attendance for the district was 96.5%. And that is a baseline comparison for each of the schools that follow on your graph, on your chart. The third attachment shows the ranking for elementaries and secondary campuses. And we have, for April 2013, Lamar Elementary ranked number 1, 98.03. Ruben Chavira, 97.63. Buena Vista, 97.52. Garfield Elementary, 97.47. Dr. Fermin Calderon, 97.18. Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary, 97.04. North Heights Elementary, 96.87. And Irene Cardwell Elementary, 93.44. For the secondary campuses, ranking number 1 this month for April 2013, Del Rio Middle School, 97.17. San Felipe Memorial, 96.37. Del Rio Freshman School, 96.3. And Del Rio High School, 94.34.
Questions for Mr. Luna? Comments?
I have to make
Mesa
a I noticed those numbers, and again, I'm addressing this to the principals, because again, we struggle with our budget, and this year, we're hearing that perhaps, we might have some, additional monies bumped in, from the state, but ultimately, the funding that we get comes from our attendance, and I'm always real critical, because again, I want to be fair with everyone, and, I know for a time, freshman was a concern, but my concern right now is high school. I've seen it just dwindle down from 98 to 94, and that concerns me, because again, every time that we have a percentage drop, it means that more students are out there in the street, they're not getting an education, we're going to have more students that are left behind, not getting their credits, and it creates a problem. It's not only a financial problem, but it's these students that are out, that we have personnel, again, assigned either to go out and make home visits to bring these students back. But it's a concern to me. I've seen that number again from the start of the year, from 98, go to 94. And that's all I'm going to say. I think that's something needs to be done before, again, it's too late. And again, I mean, we're getting to the end of the school year, but it's something that I'd just like to point out that it's gone very low. That's all.
Comments? Mr. Lozano has a comment.
I definitely agree with Mr. Mesa, and from a historical perspective, Dr. Rios, this is an issue that we have been noticing for the last several board meetings with a slight decrease. But most specifically, we've noticed that the attendance rates drop surrounding or around the times the students are testing. So we've had discussions with Dr. Sally regarding trying to find a way to keep the students that aren't testing or after they're testing there somehow. So just from a historical perspective, I wanted you to be aware of that. Thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Chavita?
Well, there's a lot of variables that would affect attendance. And all I can say is that I'm sure the principal are trying their best. But what we need to do is to work with our parents. I think they are the ones that send them to school. They need to get us, make sure that they get up and get ready to go to school. And it would be some help for them to call us. But I think we need to work together with them. And I'm sure that our attendance will increase.
Other comments? I have an indirect but related question, actually. When was the last time the year-to-date average fell below 96%? Does anyone know? I mean, a year, 2, 3, 4 years ago, was there a time when the district's year-to-date average was below 96%?
We can research that, and we can get back to you. We can look through all the PEMS reporting that we've done, and we can, pinpoint a time, if there has ever been a time that it's gone below 96%, and we'll report back to Dr. Greer.
I was just curious because one of the district goals is 96% or above, so if you could check into it.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Luna, appreciate it. Brings us to agenda item 6J, discipline report to date by school, various campus principals presenting. Like Mr. Gonzalez is the first.
Mr. Gabriel, Dr. Rios, board members, good evening. Ms. Gonzalez, I'll presenting our discipline for the high school. Our first one is our offenses. For April, we had 2 controlled substances. We had 8 21 code of conduct violations. We had 134 insubordinations, and we had 1 fight. On that account, on our discipline actions, we had 4 out-of-school suspensions. We had 10 in-school suspensions. We had 2 placed in an alternative educational program or setting. We had 70 detentions. We had 2 parent conferences, and we had a total of 61 corrective counselings. And one slide you don't have on there that I did today was, that shows a total of 5% of our students received some kind of referral, but 95% of our students did not. The majority of our students are good students. comments?
Any questions for Mr. Gonzalez? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Mrs. Garcia from freshman school.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board. Mr. Escobedo and I are here to present the discipline report for Del Rio Freshman School. As you can see here, we have 27 students that receive a code of conduct violation. We have 54 students who received insubordination, and then one student, or one fight that involved 2 students. And the actions, we had 12 students for out-of-school suspension, 11 students for in-school suspension, 1 student that was placed at SGLC, 41 students for detention, 3 students parent conference, 12 students corrective counseling, 1 part-day OSS, 2 phones that were confiscated, and 3 citations for truancy. Is there any questions on our discipline report?
Questions for Mrs. Garcia for discussion?
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Rodriguez from middle school, Del Rio Middle School.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board. Mr. Valdez and I will be presenting the Del Rio Middle School April Discipline Report. For April, our offenses were, we had 5 students with a controlled substance, 4 at Del Rio Middle School, 1 at SGLC. We had 21 student code of conduct, 12 at SGLC and 2 at Del Rio Middle School. We had 72 students for insubordination, and we had a total of 5 fights involving 9 students. 4 of the fights were at Del Rio Middle School, 1 at SGLC. For our offenses, or actions, I'm sorry. We had 19 students that were placed in OSS, out-of-school suspension. We had 4 students in in-school suspension. We had 5 students that were placed at the alternative SGLC. We had 33 students that were placed in detention. We had 4 students that we had a parent conference with. We had 37 students for corrective counseling, and we had 2 students that were that their bus privileges were removed. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Rodriguez? Okay, thank you. Questions?
Thank you.
Mrs. Adams from San Felipe Memorial Middle School.
Good evening, Dr. Rios, welcome, Mr. Garabedian, and members of the board. I'm here to present our April offense in action for San Felipe Memorial Middle School. I must say it has been a very challenging month as far as discipline is concerned for the month of April. As you can see on our offenses, we had 1 student that was in possession of marijuana. We had 17 students with a violation of the code of conduct, 65 students in subordination, and then we had 6 fights for a total of 13 students. On the action, we had 19 students with out-of-school suspension, 7 students with in-school suspension.
We had 4 students placed at the Alternative Center, SJLC, 18 students with detention, 19 with, 4 that had a contract, administrative contract, 11 students with a parent conference, 11 corrective counseling, 6 partial day out-of-school suspension, 5 partial day in-school suspension, 5 that had their privileges removed, such as riding the bus, 2 after-school detention, and 13 lunch detention. Any questions?
Mr. Overfeld has a question.
On your first slide there where it showed the insubordination, I believe it was 65. Do you know how many, are any of those repeat offenders?
Oh, yes, sir. The majority of our students are persistent misbehavior.
Oh, I have a question too as well. When you do your corrective counseling, because everybody's doing corrective counseling, and those are repeat offenders.
Well, some of those, if it's a first offense, it's corrective counseling. Usually, if it's a second or third offense, since it's a parent conference or a detention or lunch detention, usually if it's a first offense, it's the corrective counseling.
So out of that 65, that was the number, there's 60-something there. How many you think are repeaters out of that 60-something?
If I was just guessing, I would say maybe 30. About half.
So, since they're repeaters, how do you get them, where do their parents come into play?
With every single referral that I have, on the referral, I put the time that I contact the parent, whether I left a message or I spoke to the parent, and also on the report that goes on there, every single parent is contacted. And we either wish to pursue it further by meeting in person, or we discuss it there, or we have a parent-teacher conference arranged. But every child is contacted when they do have a discipline referral in the office.
Mr. Mesa?
I just need to say this, sorry, that we might have to make the pages a lot longer because it's not gonna fit on there. It's a red flag, for us as board members to notice so many different, again, actions for the offenses and the high numbers. I think all of us, the questions that have been directed it's a high number.
It is.
And it's not over yet. So, we want to make sure that whatever personnel needs to be in the area to prevent those things from happening, but it is a high number. Again, we're running out of space on the pages here to list all the actions that were taken. So just something needs to happen there.
And unfortunately, this is a time where our teachers are taking some days off, and so when we have substitutes, the children do have a tendency to misbehave more with a substitute than they would with the teacher, and this usually happens in April and May.
Dr. Rios has a comment.
Mr. President, board members, I will make it a priority to get with the principals, particularly at the middle school, and do a full examination. I know that Dr. McNamara showed me some work that they were doing, but see how quick we can get it turned around, because it is a concern. I hope to address it in a short time.
And if I may add one more thing, that it really doesn't pertain to your campus, but anytime SGLC is mentioned, it kind of catches my attention, because again, it's supposed to be a small setting and confined area, and we have everything from personnel to security there, and yet I still see students in possession, for example, of controlled substance.
Yes, sir.
Or fighting, and again, it's not relating to your campus, but those things really should not be occurring, and that setting was designed for that, to take them out of a large setting and have them in a smaller setting. And in other districts, we don't see those type of things. And again, this is not a reflection on your campus. I'm sorry, I'm addressing something, but I think it's a concern, because when I see that happening in a smaller setting, I'm saying it should not happen. That was the whole reason of having an alternative site for those students that are continuous, repeat offenders. And so again, it's a concern. I just wanted to express that. And Dr. Rios, is not the first time that we bring, this sort of, I guess, attention to those areas that I think are just, it's a red flag because it should not happen.
And this is the first time, 4 is the most students we've had all year long at SGLC.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chavita has a comment or a question.
I'm just like Mr. Mesa here. When I first started being a principal, that was my job was to discipline, and it's hard. But as the saying goes, a lot of times we spend a lot of time mopping the water instead of shutting the water off. And by that I mean is, we're towards the end of the year. Maybe we need to, next year, plan for next year and really start out with a bang and principals, I know you need the help from the teachers. They need to do a better job of discipline because once it gets on to right now, like you were saying, it's hard. It's hard to turn them off. So if we could get started, I don't think we'll have this long of a list. We need to get on it at the beginning because otherwise it's hard. It's hard to do so. I know being a principal, a former principal, I did everything I possibly could at the beginning, and it seemed like it paid off. So I know it's hard. So I know that, but it takes, again, like I was saying about the parents helping us out, the same way with this one, the same with the teachers. We need to work together with the board and everybody to see that our kids, maybe keeping them busy. That's another thing. They become idle and they look for something to do. So we'll work on it. Dr. Rios here, maybe we can come up with a good plan for next year. But thank you anyway. I know it's hard.
Anything else, Ms. Adams? Thank you.
Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board, I'm going to present the elementary discipline report. For Garfield Elementary, on the April discipline offenses, there were 12 violations of the code of conduct. And the actions were 1 in-school suspension, 1 detention, 1 parent conference, 5 corrective counseling, and 3 lunch detentions. And again, this was 1% of their overall total population. For Buena Vista, they had a teacher referral and a code of conduct. And again, 1 parent conference for the teacher referral and 1 corrective counseling, which was 0.2% of their population. It's a little different than last month's. We just tried to do to the exact amount of students to violations. So we can show you that at the very end. For Dr. Fermin Calderon on offenses, there were 3, all under the code of conduct. Again, 2 corrective counselings and 1 partial day OSS out-of-school suspension. And this was 0.3% of their total population with 99.7% no discipline referrals. For Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary, there was 1 controlled substance case and 34 violations of the code of conduct. Again, for the actions, 1 out-of-school suspension, 1 placed at the alternative elementary campus, was at North Heights Elementary, 2 detentions, 5 parent conferences, 4 corrective counseling, removal of access of privileges on 3 of those students, and 15 lunch detentions, and this was 4% of their overall population. For North Heights, we did have 10 violations of the code of conduct. 7 were detentions, usually lunch detention, and 3 corrective counseling, and this was 1% of our overall discipline. For Lamar Elementary, there were 4 violations of code of conduct, 1 out-of-school suspension, 1 parent conference, and 2 corrective counselings. And again, 0.7% of the overall discipline total students. For Ruben Chavita Elementary, it was 6 violations to the code of conduct, 2 removal of privileges, and 4 lunch detentions, which was 1% of their overall population. Again, total population for students with discipline was 1%, which is about 4,951 students, and 64 students had discipline referrals. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Lozano has a question.
Yes.
I'm curious, at Dr. Lonnie Green, did you say that was 4%
Yes,
or 0.4?
4%. And when we do our percentages, we have them in the Excel spreadsheet, and so if you'll look up here, whenever we click on an amount, and I can go back to their slide, so like the total for total students, I'm going to correct my numbers, was 4,915 students, and students with discipline referrals were 69, so we actually call for the populations, so whatever your total enrollment is, and then how many students had discipline referrals. So I'll go back up to...
Is that the number of students that had discipline referrals?
Yes.
Or the number of?
For them, they have 739 total students at their campus, and 32 students received a discipline referral, so which came out to 4% of their overall population that had a referral.
That's interesting. Everyone else is at 1% or less.
Well, and it depends on the enrollment too, so they had a larger number of
But
referrals.
proportionately, it would be similar. I mean, it should balance out.
Mhm. Would you like to see another campus so you can see a comparison? Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions, move on. Brings us to agenda item 7, which is the consent agenda. Consent A, first item being consideration of approved minutes of the following meetings: April 15th, 2013, regular school board meeting, and April 30th, 2013, special called board meeting. Does any board member wish to pull any item from the consent A agenda for discussion? Mr. Overfeld?
I don't necessarily know if it needs to be pulled, it's just a correction. And the regular board meeting minutes for April 15th, it has 6 members in attendance, however, all 7 were here.
So that says at the time it's 6 o'clock. So it says arrived at 6:06 p.m.
Okay. My oversight then.
Ms. Falcone, that's how you've been reporting it, correct?
Okay, then we're good.
So in the future, should I not come at all?
No,
Just a
it's-
question.
You're welcome to be here. You're welcome to come. Okay, my mistake then. We're good.
Anything else for consent A? Is there a motion to approve the items on consent agenda A? Mr. Chavita has motion, Mr. Mesa has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous, motion carries. Brings us to consent B. Does any board member wish to pull any item from the consent B agenda for discussion? No? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the items on the consent B agenda? Mr. Overfeld has motioned, I second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries. And as is the custom at this time, the consent B agenda had a large number of donations. It's customary that we recognize those donors at this point, so we'll take just a moment. There was a monetary donation from Sul Ross State University in the amount of $1,560 donated to Del Rio Middle School. A monetary donation from the San Felipe Lions Club in the amount of $500 donated to Del Rio High School. Monetary donation from Pro Color Studio in the amount of $911 donated to Buena Vista Elementary. Monetary donation from Sergeant Sloan in the amount of $200 donated to Del Rio High School Jazz Band. Monetary donation from St. Joseph's Church in the amount of $250 to Del Rio High School Mariachi de Medianoche. Monetary donation from Del Rio High School Air Force Junior ROTC Booster Club in the amount of $1,060.12 to Del Rio High School Air Force Junior ROTC. Monetary donation from Del Rio Ford in the amount of $1,000 donated to Del Rio High School Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Monetary donation from Del Rio Boys and Girls Track Booster Club in the amount of $2,003.28 donated to Del Rio High School Boys and Girls Track. Monetary donation from San Felipe Lions Club in the amount of $500 donated to Teachers of the Year Award. Monetary donation from Life Touch in the amount of $912 donated to Buena Vista Elementary. Monetary donation from Life Touch in the amount of $1,087.80 donated to Ruben Chavita Elementary. Monetary donation from Life Touch in the amount of $1,243.90 donated to Del Rio High School Student Council. A monetary donation from Life Touch in the amount of $361.17 donated to San Felipe Memorial Middle School. Monetary donation from Walmart in the amount of $250 donated to Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary. Donation from Life Touch in the amount of $1,429.80 donated to Dr. Fermin Calderon Elementary. And then there were non-monetary donations. Non-monetary donation from TJ Moore Lumberyard. Lumber materials valued at $705.50 donated to Del Rio High School Career and Technical Education Manufacturing Cluster. Non-monetary donation from the Bank and Trust. A tree valued at $125 donated to Del Rio Middle School. Non-monetary donation from Border Federal Credit Union. Tree valued at $125 to Del Rio Middle School. And a non-monetary donation from American Auto Parts, a tree valued at $125 donated to Del Rio Middle School. So we thank each one of those donors for their generosity and support of the district. It's now approximately 7:45 p.m. and we're on agenda item 9, discussion action items. Rather lengthy list, but you know, having read the packet, most of them rather routine, customary at this time of the year, so it's not quite as long as it looks. So that brings us to agenda item 9A. Consideration toward RFP number 13-14 freshman campus re-roofing and related work project. Mr. Salinas and Mr. Graves presenting.
Good evening again. On March the 18th, the Board of Trustees approved the competitive seal proposals method as the construction delivery method for the construction of the district's roofing projects utilizing my annual budget from my department. So therefore, we move forward to prepare an RFP 13-14, and we received 4 respondents, and under separate cover, you have that in your packet. The 4 respondents were QA Construction, Rain Seal Masters, Tri-Lam, and CS Advantage. And so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Graves to go over those numbers with you.
The proposals that we received are basically for labor only. The school, through the buy board, buys the materials for the roofing. And so this tabulation that you have has a total cost over at the end. But for instance, the base bid on the freshman campus, QA Construction, $245,821. Rain Seal Masters, $164,000. Tri-Lam, $154,671. CS Advantage, $222,000. The next column has a material cost for each of those. The material cost is a little bit different because each of the contractors figures their own quantities on it. That's why they're not all the same. So to come up with the recommended contractor on it, we analyze each of those, add the labor and the materials, and see which is the best value for the school district. And if you look over in the last columns, there is the base bid plus alternate number one. And on the map there, alternate number one includes building K on the map. Alternate number two is building G. That's the administration area. And we took alternates to see how close we could get, I guess, to the budget on there. And on the, if we did the base bid, which is building C, D, J, and L, and added alternate number one, we are at $406,438. That's the next to the last column on the right. And if we add alternate number two, one and two, the total price is $510,086. The next low bid was $527,660. The budget amount, I think originally we had enough to do alternate number one, and I'm not sure, did we decide whether?
Yes. The original budget was $490,000, that was in our budget, but I'll present later, the Texas Schools grant opportunity allowed us to recoup $150,000 on the chiller system that we're not going to have to pay for, and so we took part of that money and applied it to this project so that we can go ahead and complete all the roofing on this campus. The B wing, which is this wing right here, is already complete, and E and F, which is the gym and the dressing area, is also complete. And so the recommendation tonight is going to be to accept alternate two, since we were able to move some money around and add to the $490,000.
Questions? Mr. Chavita has a question.
How many squares are they? Total, how many squares?
Oh.
Roofing squares?
We can calculate that for you. We don't have that here in front of us.
I was just
about,
well, you
well,
bid on the
probably,
squares.
I don't want to really say, it's about 500 squares. Or 50. I think it's more like 50.
Well, that's a pretty good price.
50,000 square feet, I think.
So that's going to complete the whole.
That'll complete the whole
It'll
campus.
complete the whole campus. They had a roof that was only really warranted for 5 years, and we've had it for 20 plus.
Yeah, no. That's great.
It's always one of those deferred maintenance items with us.
Any other questions, comments for this item? Okay, the recommendation.
Okay, so it's the recommendation of the administration, the San Felipe Del Rio CISD Board of Trustees, authorize the administration to negotiate a contract with Tri-Lam Roofing and Waterproofing Incorporated of Fort Worth, Texas, for the Del Rio Freshman School Buildings CDG, J, K, and L re-roofing project in accordance with RFP 13-14 that includes the base bid, alternate one, and alternate two, in the amount not to exceed $510,086, and authorize the superintendent of schools to sign the contract.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Mesa has motion, Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries. Brings us to agenda item 9B.
Thank you.
Consideration to award the interlocal quote number 13-47 for the Del Rio High School practice baseball field lighting project. Again, Mr. Salinas and Mr. Graves presenting.
Also on March the 18th, the board approved the interlocal contract purchasing cooperative as the construction delivery method for this project. Therefore, we took several quotes per ILQ 13-47. And under separate cover, you'll see the three companies that provided a quote: Sports Facilities Company, Musco Lighting, and Techline Sports Lighting. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Graves to go over those numbers.
Sports Facilities is a company. We've used both Sports Facilities and Musco Lighting on some of the lights for the fields. Sports Facilities, I believe they did most of the tennis courts over there. Musco Lighting did some of the stadium lights, relamping those on it. The existing electrical is over by the freshman campus. We were looking at Building K a while ago. It's over there. So we need to bring electricity to the field. And that's what this other proposal is for from A&G Electric. We did get another proposal that was a little bit less, but it did not include any transformers or disconnect switches. What we're recommending is that we use Sports Facilities Company. Since they were the low bid, the bids varied from $99,677 to $149,000. And adding both of those together, we're looking at Sports Facilities Company, $113,517 versus Musco, $162,840. Techline had a good bid on theirs, and their total was $146,840. The time of completion with alternates number 1 and number 2 will either be 60 or 90 days on there for construction on it. It depends on where the status of the light fixtures are, whether they're already manufactured or whether they have to be manufactured, the light poles. Are there any questions?
Mr. Overfeld has a question.
Bring power over from the freshman to that box there, and the transformer that will ultimately be put in there, or the unit that will go there, will that support anything else in the future?
We have it set up to where it won't support a whole lot, but we were looking at a location for a concession, probably putting that between the baseball field and the tennis courts.
For what now?
A concession,
Restrooms
and concession that would serve both the baseball field and the tennis courts. And we were looking at putting those in between, and from there, the panel that we're putting in at the transformer would have enough service for that on it.
Okay, so say in the future, we put the concession and we decide to expand on that, and we put storage and offices there to coach's office or whatever, and restroom facilities bigger than a little concession to service the tennis facilities there. Something that big, is that going to be fine, or we have to come back in and rewire the whole system?
No, they just put in the new transformer on there, so it's plenty big. We might have to add another panel beside the existing, or the panel they're going to be putting on there.
Won't have to go digging any.
No.
Other questions, discussion?
Okay, it's the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees authorize the administration to negotiate a contract with Sports Facilities Company of Katy, Texas for the Del Rio High School practice baseball field lighting project in accordance to ILQ 13-47 in the amount not to exceed $99,677, and authorize the superintendent of schools to sign the contract.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita has motioned. Is there a second? Mrs. Lozano has second. All in favor by show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sir,
Mr. Chavita has a
who's going to
follow-up.
be able to use these fields, Mr. Salinas?
Well, right now, We have not added it because it doesn't have lights to our rental facility program, but we'll be doing that analysis during the summer and with,
Years to come, yeah.
yes, and it'll be available to the community if the board so wishes per that process.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Brings us to agenda item 9C, consideration to approve the resolution to extend the current depository bid contract with the Bank and Trust for another 2-year period, for the biennium September 1, 2013 through August 31st, 2015. Gianna Valdez presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, board members. The Bank and Trust has agreed to extend the depository bid contract that was negotiated after a depository bid was conducted back in 2011. The depository bid that was conducted in 2011 was done by our investment advisor, Mr. Dick Long, who was previously with Estrada Hinojosa and Associates, and now he has his own firm called Valley View. The depository bid was approved at the May 2011 board meeting with the option to extend the contract for 2 additional 2-year terms, which is part of the Texas Education Code, Subchapter G, Section 45.205. The resolution was signed at the Bank and Trust, and the resolution was included under separate cover, but it was signed by the Bank and Trust on an April 23rd, 2013 meeting. Do you have any questions?
Questions or discussion on this?
Okay.
Recommendation, please.
The administration recommends that the Board of Trustees approve the resolution to extend the current depository bid contract with the Bank and Trust beginning September 1st, 2013 and ending on August 31st, 2015 as presented, and authorize the board president to sign the resolution.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita has motion, Mr. Mesa has second. All in favor by show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 9D, consideration to approve engagement letter with Belt, Harris, and Petchek LLLP and approve the superintendent to sign the agreement. Ms. Valdez again presenting.
At the last board meeting, we requested approval to move forward and meet with the audited firms that had submitted bids and to find and negotiate an engagement letter. Well, the auditors that have submitted their bid that we would like to move forward with to request are Bell Harris and Pachek, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, LLP. They are from Houston, and they did provide us an engagement letter, and they are the most highly, we believe they are the most highly qualified auditor service, and they did provide a very reasonable price. At first, they had mentioned that with the airport, it would be easy for them to commute to Del Rio. We immediately, updated them on the status. So in order to keep their price competitive, what they're doing is assigning their dates in San Antonio with the firms that they have and coordinating with our dates in Del Rio, which will keep their cost reasonable for us. The engagement letter was included under separate cover. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Mesa has a question.
Yes, sir.
Connie, what would help me as a board member, because I know, the previous auditor, and again, the governmental entities that they did, like the county, the school district, with this firm, I have no knowledge of what auditing they do for governmental entities. So I think what would help is, what they're currently doing in our area, because again, especially school districts, I want to see how familiar they are with, again, the regulations, that are required for auditing governmental entities such as school districts and counties. And I think that's something, because I kept looking for something of that sort.
No, sir,
and
I
couldn't find it.
apologize. It wasn't in there, but we can send the list out to all the board members.
And again, this is something, for me as a board member to make a decision, because I think every audit with the different firms that I've been associated with have different regulations, and I know governmental entities, I'd like to see if they have some experience and see what areas they're doing now so that I could be comfortable with that firm.
We did contact several of the school districts, and I didn't bring the list with me. They are certified by TEA to audit school districts and other government entities. They did have a long list in their packet of government entities, cities, and school districts. And as I mentioned, we did call other school districts, and everybody was very satisfied with their service.
Then I guess my question would be, do you have one that's in the immediate area that they do?
Not in Del Rio.
No.
No.
What's the closest one?
Well, they would be in San Antonio.
Do you remember offhand what district?
No, sir, you'd have to go look that up.
Other questions, comments? No? Okay, the recommendation, please.
The administration recommends approval of the engagement letter with Belt Harris Pacheck LLP to conduct the 2012-13 audit with the option to extend up to 4 additional years depending on the satisfaction of both parties, and to approve the superintendent to sign the engagement letter.
Heard the recommendation, I so move that we accept. Is there a second? Mr. Chavita, a second. All in favor, by a show of hands. Again, I couldn't see. Show of hands, please. It's unanimous. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Agenda item 9E, consideration to approve resolution to designate authorized representatives for investing. Ms. Valdez presenting.
Okay, thank you. The next 3 action items are for the change of leadership in order to change the signatories and have designated representatives. The first one is for the to designate authorized representatives for our investments. We signed with the signature of this resolution. We will then send this memo to our current 2 entities that we have CDs with, which are Comerica and Southside Bank. And then at that time, we will be able to change our signatures with them.
Questions on this item? Recommendation?
Okay. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the resolution to designate authorized representatives for investing as presented under separate cover, and authorize the board president and board secretary to sign the resolution.
Heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita has motioned. Mr. Overfelt has second. All in favor by show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries. Agenda item 9F. Consideration to approve resolutions to participate and designate authorized representatives in tax pool fund and First Public Lone Star Investment Pool. Ms. Valdez presenting.
Thank you. Included under separate cover is the resolution for tax pool and 2 resolutions for First Public. Again, this is to change the authorized representatives for the district. And tax pool and First Public are 2 banks that we maintain our funds in. Do you have any questions?
Question or comment? Recommendation, please.
Okay. It is the recommendation of the administration. Oh, I'm sorry.
I think there was. Did you have a question, Dr. Keys?
Have they notified you about the upswing the stock market's been taking? Will this be a good time for us to invest? Can we look for something good at least?
Well, for investments for school districts, we're very limited just to CDs and money market accounts. So we just renewed our CDs in December and in February.
Thank you.
Okay.
Back again to the recommendation.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the resolution to designate authorized representatives as presented under separate cover, and authorize the board president and board secretary to sign the resolutions.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Mesa has motion, Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries. Agenda item 9G, consideration to approve signatories of the bank and trust to be the superintendent and chief financial officer. Ms. Valdez presenting.
Thank you. The final bank for us to update our signatories and authorize representatives is the bank and trust. Once they do not have a resolution, however, we do present it to the board as a recommendation for them to, for approval, and then tomorrow morning we will be contacting them in order to update the signature cards.
Questions or comments on this item? Okay, the recommendation.
Thank you. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the signatories at the Bank and Trust to be the Superintendent of Schools and the Chief Financial Officer, effective May 20, 2013.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Overfelt has motioned, Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 9H, consideration to approve contract services with ESC Region 20 to conduct an ELL folder audit. Sandra Hernandez presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. I'm here tonight to present a consideration. On December 14, 2012, San Felipe Del Rio CISD received an on-site visit from the Texas Education Agency PBMAS review team. And on this report of findings, which was presented back in January of this year, one of the corrective actions that is required by the bilingual program includes an ELL folder audit. The ELL district folder audit randomly samples English language learner student records, and these records are reviewed based on documentation that should be maintained as required by the state, Chapter 89. We will be recommending Region 20 an independent source for review. They have been extensively used by the Texas Education Agency to train PBMAS program auditors for review, and we will be recommending to ask them to come to Del Rio.
Discussion or questions for Ms. Hernandez? Mr. Chavita first.
How many times, when was the last time we had an audit on this? Do we, I mean, because I don't remember.
The folder audit was an on-site audit that was triggered by the PBMAS stage, and the stage 4 that occurred back last year triggered the on-site review back in January of 2012. And so as a result, the review or the report of findings that was given to us, released in December, was presented this January, that I presented this year.
Mr. Mesa has a follow-up.
I was looking at the amount, and it seems reasonable enough, again, it's unfortunate that, we have to spend the money because of the stage that we're in. But my question relates to how long will it take to audit the folders?
They will do an independent audit, and they will be bringing in a team of 3 to 4 people, and what they will do is go to the different campuses and do random pullouts of folders, at which what they will do is then report back to me and to the campus principals on what their findings were and make recommendations.
Okay.
So they will not be pulling every single folder, but doing a random sampling.
Okay, so there would be time enough to,
Yes, they will be here
sure
for
that,
one full day to do that.
and the whole idea is that there would be continuity from one campus to another, I'm assuming.
That is correct, and that it would be the systemic, what we were going to improve on are those systemic issues at the campus level.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else
Are there any other questions?
for the recommendation?
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approves the superintendent to sign the contract to authorize the payment to Education Service Center Region 20 as presented.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mrs. Lozano has motion, Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 9I, consideration to approve contract services with Vicki Sanderson as a motivational speaker at Del Rio Middle School. Ms. Ida Gomez presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian and Dr. Rios, members of the board. Part of the TIPS grant allows us to bring presenters, or I should say encourages us to bring presenters that actually motivate our teachers. They do understand that that's part of the team building that's needed. So we were fortunate enough to contact Vicki Sanderson. She's out of Dallas, and she is a motivational speaker who's actually been in Del Rio before. The Del Rio High School staff did have her presentation a few summers ago. I have spoken to her on the phone several times, and I'm really looking forward to this presentation. She has agreed to do 4 3-hour sessions for our district over a 2-day period. So it'd be 2 morning sessions and 2 afternoon sessions. We have been able to split up the entire Del Rio Middle School staff to include all professional aides, secretaries, counselors, cafeteria, custodians, the entire staff to see her during those 4 sessions. And we've also been able to open up slots for all the other schools in Del Rio to send some staff members. Vicki Sanderson is going to focus on what she calls creating a team for success. She's going to include in her presentation positive attitudes, communication styles, gossip and tattling, classroom management, and conflict resolution and leadership. Are there any questions?
Questions?
Is it, I noticed on the contract, it says all day, so that means that small groups will be talked to?
She's going to do an 8 to 11 and then a 12:30 to 3:30.
Oh,
so that we could use the subs for the entire day, and so we can split them up and make sure that their lunches are covered.
And so this is May 28th and 29th.
Yes, sir. It's right after the holiday. Monday, the 27th, she'll come in. Yes. This week we have Victoria Bernhardt, but next week we have Vicki Sanderson.
So those classroom teachers that'll be attending, what else is going on their schedule those days?
They actually will have lesson plans, just like anything else. We were able to figure out the schedule to get 10 subs. The rest are covered by each other. So every classroom is covered by either an instructional aide, our TIPS personnel, our social worker, our intervention counselors. Like we're pulling everybody to cover the classrooms and go in there and just like they would a substitute. We're not going to skip periods. We're not going to do anything with the students. This is strictly for the staff.
You also mentioned slots available for people from other campuses.
Yes, sir.
I would assume that's voluntary, correct? Or is that something that's going to be assigned by principals? I mean,
I'm not sure how the principals selected their staff to go.
What we actually did, Mr. Garabedian, is present this to the campus principals, and it was up to them to select these teachers. It was a volunteer basis. It was not anything that was required.
Okay. Say that again?
It was up to the principals to decide who was going to go in there, but they actually selected their own staff. We did not actually go out there and select them ourselves.
So if I was a teacher and I got selected, could I opt out for grading or other purposes if I was involved in those?
That is a very difficult question, Mr. Garabedian, but I would say yes, you would have an option to not go. But it was highly encouraged because I've seen this presenter, and I think it would be a great benefit if they would miss out from this presentation.
Other questions? No? Okay. Recommendation?
It is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve for the superintendent to sign the contract and authorization of payment to Vicki Sanderson as presented.
Heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Missa has motion. Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor, by a show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Agenda item 9J, consideration to approve contract services with Lead Forward Del Rio Middle School. Presenter again, Ms. Ida Gomez.
Good evening again. Again, part of the TIPS grant does allow us to have professional development at our campus, and we've been very fortunate this year to get some excellent professional development. It is late in the year, but we were able to contract or speak to Lead Forward, who has been on campus doing some math training for us, to actually present some science and social studies training in June. I have spoken to the 10 science teachers and the 10 social studies teachers that would be participating on June 26th and 28th. It is an all-day training, one for each content area. They have all committed. The actual training is called Purposefully Using the Processes, but in speaking to the company, the teachers would actually be looking at data and what to do with it. The reteaching, the spiraling, the student engagement, the increasing of rigor, all the things that we currently are struggling with at the campus. We've got the lesson plans down, and now making them more student engaging, making them more rigorous is where we actually need the help. Looking at the TEAC specificity is something that they're experts in, and that's something that we really feel would benefit our science and social studies teachers. Any questions?
Questions for Ms. Gomez on this item? Okay, recommendation.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approves for the superintendent to sign the contract and authorization of payment to Lead Forward as presented.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Haynes, this motion, Mr. Overfelt has second. All in favor, by a show of hands?
Thank you.
Motion carries. Agenda item 9K. Consideration to approve contract services with Lead Forward for STAR Assessment Accountability Update. Ms. Patty Brown presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, board members. A contract for services, again with Lead Forward, is being requested for a district staff development called STAR Assessment and Accountability Update for August 21st, one of our staff development days. Leaders and leadership teams will learn what new laws will have an impact on student assessment, graduation plans, and accountability. They will gain clarity on what accountability looks like and prepare for the 2013-2014 school year. Learning will be extended on data decision-making and organizing and establishing priorities. 300 district and campus leadership teams will attend this training.
Questions? Comments? Okay, the recommendation.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approves for the superintendent to sign the contract and authorization of payment to Lead Forward as presented.
Heard the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Overfelt has motion, Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 9L, consideration to approve 2013 Summer Food Service Program application. Ms. Diane Hernandez presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Mr. Rios, ladies and gentlemen of the board. It's that time of year where we close one program and segue into another. So I am bringing before you the consideration to approve the 2013 Summer Food Service Program application. We are required by the Texas Health and Human Services Commission, since we are a district that is a highly food insecure, over 50% free and reduced rate, we are mandated to offer the summer food program. And so we try to maximize facilities that we already have in operation for our summer school programs for academics. And we open those sites as well to service as many children of our summer school agenda and any child from the age of 1 to 18 from the community or surrounding area. We don't ask for any identification or proof of age, etc. So the summer sites this year are going to be Del Rio High School, Del Rio Middle School,
San Felipe Memorial Middle School, Lamar Elementary, and Lonnie Green Elementary are the summer school sites. And so we will be having our summer food program there as well. If you go ahead and approve, yes, thank you. I was searching for that. If you go ahead and approve the recommendation. So we have any questions?
Yes, I have a question, and I'm just curious, because this is something that I think is very important and excellent, so don't take it any other way. But how do you determine which schools? Because I'm sitting here looking at Del Rio Middle School, which seems kind of landlocked or isolated across the highway. Del Rio High School is centrally located, San Felipe Memorial, Lamar. I'm just thinking, Del Rio Middle School. Yes, sir.
All these sites coincide, Mr. Garabedian, where we're having summer school, so therefore we can feed the students that are attending
That
summer
are
school.
there.
And then everybody else is welcome to come in from the neighborhoods, but that is one of the big determinants.
Correct. That's how it's determined. And Del Rio Middle School is only open until the end of June, and as well as San Felipe, I believe. The remainder of the programs will be open through August, or a portion of August. So they'll be serving a broad spectrum of the community, which is what we strive to do.
Other questions? Okay, recommendation?
It is the recommendation of the administration that the San Felipe Del Rio CISD School Board of Trustees approve the Summer Food Service Program application as presented.
Heard the recommendation, I so move we accept. Is there a second? Ms. Lozano has seconded. All in favor? By show of hands. Unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brings us to agenda item 9M, consideration to approve submission of application for the 2013-14 consolidated E-grant application for federal funding to the appropriate headquarter authority. Ms. Michelle Smith presenting.
Okay, good evening once again, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board. It's that time of the year to begin planning for next year. The amounts that you see on here that we plan on submitting in our application, these amounts are due to change, but they do reflect the 5.2% due to the sequestration. In particular, our Title I, and I have a correction here, it's a Title I Part D, Subpart 2. Our Title III Part A LEP also reflects the 5.2% reduction, as well as our Part C migrant. Our Title II Part A, which would be our which is our teacher and principal training, we have a hold harmless amount of 95%, so we are guaranteed that 95% from last year's maximum title amount. The same applies to the Title I Part A. We are guaranteed, I hate to use that word guarantee with the government, but we're looking at that 95% from our maximum entitlement. Now, as we go through the years, as we progress through the year, the amounts will change. Our official planning amounts are due early June, the same time when our application opens up on the 6th of June. At the same time, we will probably receive a revised amount July 1st. Many of our programs, the monies that we get from those programs are dependent on the number of students enrolled in those particular programs, like the migrant, our LEP students. So all of that will change as the year goes on. We expect to get our maximum entitlement in October. But these are really, I think these are good starting points. I don't expect them to go down. If anything, they should go up. So we're being very conservative with these amounts right here.
Question, Mr. Chavita has a question.
I'm just curious, is there any change in the migrants, the number of migrant students that we have?
It's funny that you would ask that, because I was just gathering the information. We are right now about 200 less than last year, but we have to keep in mind that we recruit until the end of August. So all the migrants that come in over the summer, we also will be able to recruit them. So our number for funding will be based on our final count at the end of August. Right now, we're roughly 200 students less than last year.
Other comments or questions from Ms. Smith? Okay, the recommendation, please.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the submission of the consolidated e-grant application in the amount of $5,141,085 for the funding of federal programs to the appropriate headquarter authority for the 2013-2014 year as presented.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept the same motion? Mr. Chavita is second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 9N, consideration of approved training services with Skyward for HR Finance. Shanakani Valdez presenting.
Good evening again. I am requesting contracted services with Skyward, and this is for our HR Finance Coordinator, and this is in the area of salary negotiations, which is very critical for our budget process. We had initiated services with Skyward, and this was prior to the removal of the $5,000 rule. So we did start with them, and we had started with 6 hours. As we went through the process, we realized that we needed additional time, and so we've asked for 10 more hours.
Questions? Dr. Keys has a question.
Funding coming from where to pay for this?
The funding is coming out of my, or the CFO's budget.
Do we have enough allocated in there?
Yes, sir, this is for 1,635, yes. At the time that I wrote the memo, they hadn't sent me the contract, so I semi-calculated and knew it wouldn't exceed 2,000. So that's why my memo mentions not to exceed 2,000, but.
Other comment?
Why bring it to the board if it's under 25,000?
We've been doing that. It's been going on for like a year now.
Unusual.
The contract.
It's been about at least a year. That's fine. Questions? The recommendation?
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approves for the superintendent to sign the contract and authorization of payment to Skyward as presented.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Ms. Lozano has motion, Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor, by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Agenda item 9O, consideration to approve the implementation of TeachScape pilot PDAS teacher appraisal system for Del Rio Middle School staff and approval to sign the agreement for data sharing. Ms. Ida Gomez presenting.
Good evening again, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. In the 2012-13 school year, as part of the TIPS grant, we did follow a pilot PDAS system. The state is piloting 2 different systems, and the one that we're using is called TeachScape. Once again, I come before you asking that you consider that we continue with that pilot PDAS again as part of the grant requirement, and just like last year, that you allow for Dr. Rios to sign the agreement with the 3 companies that we actually have to data share with. And the way it works is TA consults with 3 different companies, and they're actually Institutes for Research, Battelle for Kids, and Gibson Consulting Group. These are 3 contracted companies that TA uses to take all of our data. All of our observations are done through a website. Everything is electronic, and we would just share that information with them. They actually compile data to look at if we're evaluating teachers at the same rate that our students are showing success. So if our evaluations come in too high and our students too low, there's going to be a discrepancy or vice versa. So they're actually collecting data across the state to see that it's really the effectiveness of the classroom teacher in comparison to the success of the students. Any questions?
Questions? Okay, the recommendation.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approves the implementation of the TeachScape pilot PDAS teacher appraisal system for Del Rio Middle School staff and approve for Dr. Rios to sign the agreement for data sharing.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Overfelt has motion, Ms. Lozano has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Agenda item 9P, consideration to approve collaborative agreement between TMC, Teaching and Mentoring Communities, and San Felipe Del Rio CISD. Presenter Dr. Jorge Garza and Dr. Deanna Aguirre.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. Federal law does require that San Felipe Del Rio CISD, through the Special Education Department, coordinate with local agents, community agencies, and private schools for the provision of services to eligible students with disabilities through child find efforts and by providing a free appropriate public education as appropriate. A collaborative agreement has existed between TMC, which is Teaching and Mentoring Communities. They were formerly Texas Migrant Council, and the San Felipe Del Rio CISD for several years, and it has been signed every 3 years. I believe that it is required for TMC to have a signed collaborative agreement as part of their probably grant requirements, whatever it is that they must have federally to indicate that we do have a working relationship. And that's really what the purpose of this collaborative agreement is to demonstrate the working relationship between San Felipe Del Rio CISD and Teaching, Mentoring Communities.
Questions or discussion? Okay, the recommendation, please.
It is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the agreement between TMC and San Felipe Del Rio CISD, and that our superintendent sign the collaborative agreement as documentation of our working relationship.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita has motion, Mr. Mesa has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 9Q, consideration to approve amending our Texas Schools grant application and authorizing Dr. Carlos H. Rios to sign all grant documents as needed. Presenter, Mr. Miguel Salinas.
Good evening again. I went ahead and included an update instead of providing it separate during the information. Just wanted to go over the timeline that on April the 2nd, the board did approve the interim superintendent to sign the agreement from the comptroller in the amount of $745,165.67. In addition, you authorized the interim superintendent to accept additional funds if they became available. And you also authorized us to issue purchase orders over $25,000 to the appropriate vendor or vendors to fulfill the requirements of the Texas Schools grant agreement as appropriate. Well, from that time, from April the 2nd, on April the 8th, I received notification that we qualified for an additional $138,172.10 for a possible grant amount of $883,337.77. So on April the 30th, the district statement of work, which is the scope of work that we had outlined for the state office, was approved by SECO's engineer, but only in the amount of $873,185.77. So we lost approximately $10,000 that was not approved because they deemed it more athletic than instructional. So on May the 3rd, our interim superintendent signed the agreement in the amount of $873,185.77, and we sent it to the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts for final consideration. And I'm pleased to report that on May the 10th, we received the original fully signed Texas Schools grant agreement in the amount of $873,185.77. So it's official, we are receiving those funds to take care of the scope of work that we outlined for them. And by the way, our vendor is Train Commercial System. Since they helped us with the scope of work, they're taking responsibility for those $10,000, and they're going to make that unit good for the district. So for the record, since there was a change in superintendency, I called the SECO office to see how we could amend the agreement, authorizing our new superintendent to sign all of the agreements. They indicated that was not necessary, that as long as the interim superintendent was authorized, that they would accept the new superintendent's signature. However, I would like it for the record just in case there's any issues down the road, that you are approving our superintendent to sign any agreements. And so if there's no questions, I'll read the recommendation.
No questions? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, it's the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve for the administration to amend any portion of the Texas Schools grant application as required by the State Energy Conservation Office to allow our superintendent of schools to sign any of the Texas Schools grant documents as needed.
Heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita has motioned. Mr. Overfelt has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries. Agenda item 9R, consideration to approve the second reading of Policy Update 95 affecting local policies AB, DFBB, DFE, DGBA, EIE, FNG, and GF. Mr. Salinas presenting.
Thank you very much. Back on March the 18th board meeting, the board authorized the first reading of Policy Update 95. We did not take the second reading in April in order to allow our new superintendent an opportunity to review those policies with Cabinet. We have reviewed them, and so we're before you today to take the second reading of Update 95. All of the Cabinet members have reviewed these policies thoroughly, and the 7 local policies that we're asking for additions, revisions, and deletions per Update 95 are as follows. AB local, district name. DFBB local, term contracts, non-renewal. DFE local, termination of employment, resignation. DGBA local, personnel, management relations, and employee complaints, grievances. EIE local, academic achievement, retention, and promotion. FNG local, student rights and responsibilities, student and parent complaints, grievances, and GF local, public complaints. Are there any questions?
Questions? Okay, recommendation, please.
It's the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the second reading of Policy Update 95 and add, revise, or delete local policies as recommended by TASB Policy Service and according to the instruction sheet for TASB Localized Policy Manual Update 95 as presented.
Per the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita has motioned. Is there a second? Mr. Overfelt is second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Salinas.
Thank you.
Agenda item 9S, consideration to approve 2013-14 teacher appraisal calendar. Dr. Patty McNamara presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. I come before you this evening to present the 2013-2014 teacher appraisal calendar. As most of you know, this is an annual item that I bring to the School Board of Trustees. The State Board of Education requires that all school districts have a teacher appraisal calendar that is approved by this body, which designates the time frame for which the appraisal period will begin and when it will end. So, like in years past, our 2013-14 school calendar for the appraisal year will include the following dates. We will begin in September, and this year it will be September 16th, and it will end next year in May 15th, 2004. All summative conferences within this appraisal calendar must be completed by May 15th, 2014. Excuse me, I think I said 2004. I apologize. 2014. In your packet on page 131, you will have a list of the periods of time for which the PDAS calendar cannot be, or excuse me, the PDAS observations or appraisals cannot be conducted within that particular time, to include the following. We need to exclude observations in the first 3 weeks after the day of completion of the PDAS orientation. Also, we need to exclude observations in the 3 weeks after the completion of the PDAS orientation for teachers new to the PDAS. You cannot have a PDAS observation within the first 3 weeks of instruction. Therefore, that's the reason why we're starting September 16th. You cannot have observations during the last day of instruction before any official holiday, and of course during the STAR testing and so forth. Exams, 6 weeks exams, and periods of testing.
Also, it must indicate a period for which the summative annual conference ends no later than 15 working days before the last day of instruction. Hence, we have May 15th, 2014. So, with that being said, the administration recommends the 2013-2014 teacher appraisal calendar to be approved as presented this evening.
Is there any questions before I ask for, Mr. Chavita has a question?
Doc,
Yes, sir.
who works on this appraisal calendar?
I do.
So the principals have no input into it?
No, sir, because these are mandated by SBEC for the begin date and the start date, and within that time period is when the principals designate when they will appraise the actual teacher. We're mandated by school board policy, which is DNA, legal, and local, to operate within these time frames as listed.
Other questions, comments? Okay. Would you repeat the recommendation?
Yes, sir. It is a recommendation of the administration that the 2013-2014 teacher appraisal calendar be approved as presented this evening.
Heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Mesa has motioned. Your second, Mr. Overfelt is second. All in favor by a show of hands. It's unanimous. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Agenda item 9T, consideration to approve the second observation appraiser listing. Dr. Patty McNamara presenting.
Well, this is the companion board agenda item for the PDAS appraisal. First, we have the calendar, and secondly, if during that time a teacher is observed or appraised by their appraiser and requests a second observation, we can certainly do that. And it is a recommendation of the administration that we look at one of three options. One would be the campus administrator at the same campus, a campus administrator at another campus, or certainly have the availability of a district administrator from the following list. We're looking at the positions of, and these are positions, Director of Bilingual ESL Education, Director of Federal Program, or Director of Special Ed. And so with that being said, the administration recommends that the School Board of Trustees approve the second observation appraiser listing as presented this evening.
Heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to accept? Mrs. Haynes has motioned. Mr. Mesa has second. All in favor by a show of hands. It's unanimous. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brings us to agenda item 10, closed session. It's now 8:48 p.m., May the 20th, 2013. The board will now recess this open session and convene a closed meeting according with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, subchapters D and E. We're able to do that under 551.071, 551.072, 551.073. Specifically tonight, we do that under 551.074, discussion of personnel or hear complaints against personnel. First item being discussion of new hires, new assignments, district vacancies, and reassignments. Second item being discussion of Director of Emergency Operations. And the third, discussion of interim head football coach. It's also permissible under 551.076, 551.082, 551.084. All final votes, actions, or decisions will be taken in open meeting. We're now in closed session. It's now 10:10 p.m., May the 20th, 2013. And the board will now reconvene in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, subchapter D and E. No action was taken in closed session. Now that we're reconvened into open session, that brings us to agenda item 12, discussion action items. A being consideration to approve new hires, new assignments, district vacancies, and reassignments. Dr. Patty McNamara presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the school board. At this time, the administration recommends the following applicants for employment at the San Felipe Del Rio CISD. Mr. Antonio Gonzalez, Network Administrator. Gabriela Padilla, English teacher, Del Rio High School.
Victor Richardson, science teacher, Del Rio High School. Liliana Keldy, 8th grade language arts teacher at Del Rio Middle School. And Robert Clockman, science teacher at Del Rio Middle School.
Heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita has motioned. Mr. Overfelt has second. All in favor by show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries. Brings us to agenda item 12B, consideration of approve the Director of Emergency Operations, presenter Dr. Patty McNamara.
Okay. Mr. Garabedian, again, Dr. Rios, members of the board. The administration respectfully recommends Mr. John Sheedy for Director of Emergency Operations.
We've heard the recommendation. I so move to accept. Is there a second? Mr. Mesa has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous. Motion carries. Brings us to agenda item 12C, consideration to approve interim head football coach, Dr. Patty McNamara presenting.
Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board, the administration respectfully recommends Mr. Frenchie McRae as our new interim head football coach.
We've heard the recommendation. I so move to accept. Is there a second? Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Brings us to agenda item 13. Being no further business before this board, is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. Overfelt has motioned. Ms. Haynes has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Good night.